Hi, this is Fix My Fibro and my name's Bernadette. So in this video, I want to talk about purines in the diet, but some of the pitfalls about purines. So I was an extremely healthy, happy, super fit, playing state level sports kind of person in my spare time before my fibro symptoms set off. And so I was eating an extremely healthy diet. So everything that you hear on TV, eat this, eat that, it's so healthy, high fiber, high fiber, high fiber, every ad on TV, got to have high fiber, high fiber, high fiber, high fiber, high purine. Sorry, it is. You must eat. All the stuff they tell you not to eat is actually the stuff that doesn't set off your symptoms when you have a purine error in your body, when you either have a gout, in the male form of gout, meaning monosodium urate gout, or in this form for us, purines in our diet, anything from medium concentration to high concentration in our diet will set off symptoms. So you can't eat brown rice. So if you think of rice, white cleaned rice, like just plain white rice, okay. When you have a brown rice, it's still covered in some of that external shell. So they go, oh, it's great. It gives you extra fiber. That outer husk is high fiber and is therefore high purine, and it will cause you symptoms. So I used to always eat brown rice. Get a sushi, get brown rice. Brown rice, brown rice, brown rice. Don't do brown rice. Don't do black rice. Don't do any other rice than just plain white rice now. So all your cereals, every single cereal has added fiber in it. It will set off your symptoms and cause purine symptoms. I think the only two cereals that I found were rice bubbles, like the Rice Krispies, but you have to actually still read the label because some of them contain soy as an additive. The cheaper versions contain a soy additive, and soy is an absolute no-no, one, because soy comes from soybean, and beans are a histamine and also a purine, remember? They're one of the medium concentration purines. So I'll do another video on soy because soy is problematic in a whole nother realm and is really nasty. One, because it's a histamine and it's a purine, and it sets off MCAS. But this talks about purines and the pitfalls in the diet. So if you literally eliminate all the soy in your diet, which I hate to tell you, but if you go to the supermarket, 90% of your shelves are full of soy and soy additives. All the commercial breads in Australia, for example, have soy flour in them. All the restaurants use breads or bakeries that use soy flour. The only bread that I can buy is from like a little Italian bakery that's just got wheat flour. It's actually a sourdough. And so that's good because it doesn't have yeast, because yeast is actually really high yeasty breads are high purine because yeast is purine. And by making these changes and doing it strictly, it totally changes your life. If I eat 2 pieces of bread with a little bit of soy flour in them, and I mean just a little bit, they might only add 5% soy flour. And the reason why they add soy flour to all the commercial breads is it increases the protein content. It's so good. It's got your breads, it's not carbs, it's got protein in it now. I'm eating a bread. It's fine if it's carbohydrate. It's an energy source. But the reason they add it in is it keeps your bread softer. So your bread stays fresh longer, and that's why they add soy flour into your breads these days. If you have this issue with purines and with MCAS, which we have both in fibromyalgia, soy is a nasty. So other purine pitfalls, your coffee. I've said it again, your coffee and your black teas, it's really hard to give them up. It probably took me about 6 months to truly give up coffee. I'm not going to lie to you. I'd still go to cafes with friends and order a really, really super weak, long black and put a little bit of milk, a little lactose-free milk on the side. it would straight away cause severe pain in my kidney, in my right back, lower back. I'd get like a heartbeat in my kidney after having a super weak coffee. And after a while, I just went, what am I doing? I'm making myself sicker. I might get a little bit of a caffeine like sort of pick me up, and then I fall in a heap half an hour later where I can barely drive and I get this severe fatigue. So the purines in caffeine are just, and coffee, just, they're not a pick me up. They're just not a pick me up. Energy drinks all have caffeine in them, and they also have another preservative, which I talk about in other videos, that will actually cause symptoms and cause severe edema. So you've got histamines, you've got purines, and they're all causing symptoms. You must cut out the purines. So I just looked up that website. It's actually acumedico.com now. They bought the .com. They used to be .net because they were a university site. So it is still there, and there's lots of information on that. I think it's the best list online, and it's really, really important that you minimize your purine content. You will have so much energy after doing so. I'll just tell you the story of how I figured out the purine thing. So I'd had my second onset. So my first onset, which I call onsets, which some of you call 2-year flares. I'm actually going through a 2-year flare at the moment, or a 2-year onset that the vaccine set off in me. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, so you anti-vaxxers that want to quote me, piss off. I'm not interested. But it set off my immune disease. And so when I first got it in 1999, I went on a 2-year course of corticosteroids. I'll talk about drugs later and what works, what doesn't, why we're not medicated correctly. And that shut down my primary illness. 5 years later, I had another onset, but then I found that Chinese medicine can shut down that MCAS side by seeing a Chinese practitioner who knew what I had. I had, once again, polymyalgia rheumatica symptoms, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go on steroids again. This is going to be awful. He shut that down. Fabulous. Well, a few years later, suddenly I get another onset. But I was eating such high purines, I literally couldn't work anymore. I was having gout attacks on a daily, almost on an every meal basis, because I was eating such high fiber foods, such healthy foods, such high protein, lots of meat. If you eat too much meat, you get too much purines. I only eat meat once a day. I can't have like ham for breakfast, chicken for lunch, beef for dinner. Way too much purines I'll get. So you mix it up with more vegetables that you can eat, and you eat meals, or you have a pasta or something like that you can have that isn't high purine, and suddenly you live your life. It's amazing. A few basic rules about purines. But I was eating such a high purine diet, I actually had to give up work. I didn't work for 2.5 years. And I can honestly say I wanted my life to end at that time because I was in such chronic pain. I was living on tramadol, gabapentin, like just blocking out the nerve sensations of all of my pain, and it was just nuts. But then I had my gallbladder out. So part of the MCAS is you get this severe inflammation that affects all your internal organs, and my internal gallbladder was pretty much destroyed. Had that removed, and when I got out of hospital, I actually felt fabulous after I got out of hospital. Within 2 or 3 days of eating the food that I'd prepared for myself, which was all super high purine, but I didn't realize it at the time, I started getting really sick. And I rang my friend who's a dietitian at a hospital. She's a clinical dietitian. We went to university together, did science together, our science degrees. And I rang her up and I said, I know what purines are in the terms of DNA, because half of our DNA is made up of purines, the ladder that's twisted. Half of those rungs are purines and the other half are called pyrimidines. They're a different chemical class, just looks a bit different. And they interlock together. A purine and a pyrimidine are like a happy couple. Anyway, getting off DNA, I was eating so many purines, and I understood purines in terms of DNA, but I said, tell me about purines in diet and specifically. And she said, I'll bring you some notes from the hospital that we give our gouty patients. I swear, she gave me that list. She came to my home because I was too sick. She came to my home a few nights later, and it was like a light bulb went off when she told me about the stone fruits. because my mum and dad had a plum tree. They'd given me plums. I'd make like a basic plum crumble. I knew that I wasn't having a reaction to sugars or plain white flour. And suddenly it would shut me down. I go, why would the plums do that? She said, they've now implicated in gout. This was back 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So, but it wasn't on any websites online at that point. So suddenly I was like, wow, it's these purines. And I looked at all my food because I'd made really high fiber snacks, super high fiber, super healthy, and I was poisoning myself with purines. So I threw all of that out into my backyard for the birdies to eat. They had a feast of purines and they loved them. And I then made myself low purine foods. And within 3 days, I had more energy than I'd had in 7.5 years. It was life-changing. So purines are critical. They're critical in your diet. You must just print out the list, figure out what are high purine foods. Shellfish are high purine. Things like Vegemite, Marmite are really high purine. You don't eat those. You don't add a spoon of that into your soup. I used to make soups and I go add some of that in for flavour. High purine, don't do it. You'll have a severe reaction. All those fruits, the 5 vegetables that I mentioned, the cauliflower, spinach, mushrooms, asparagus, and beans. And all the beans are like a dry bean will have a higher concentration of purine than a fresh bean, but you are still getting too much. You mustn't eat any beans. So I tried to go vegetarian. Oh, this video is getting really long. I tried to go vegetarian when I first got sick, and I just got sicker and sicker. So I came off the vegetarian diet because you can't do vegetarian when you've got a purine issue, because you are going to get too many purines. You need to eat too many beans to get enough of your protein source. And you can have things like eggs that don't have purines in them. And that's fine but then that's another topic, another discussion. I'll keep telling you more and more.